baby! It's mine!
This is Evan Blackwood. Some buildings were never meant to forget. Some walls remember suffering, and some nights thieves should never be taken. Tonight's story follows a security guard, a place where screams once echoed through stone halls. And this is Nightshift in the Cursed Library.
Mike had been working for more than 20 years for the same security company. That morning, his boss had called him to tell him that week he had to move to the neighboring town of Solbridge since he did not have guards available for the library on the night shift. The building had been standing for centuries. In its origins, it was built as a hospital for the mentally ill, being one of the first asylums in the area. A few decades later, it would also become the city hospital. After a terrible fire at the beginning of the 20th century, the building was rebuilt, and after serving several purposes for more than 50 years, it had been the public library of the city. Mike looked up the imposing entrance. Among its stained glass windows stood out images of saints and virgins. It was getting dark, and the last students were leaving. It was closing time, and Mike's shift was beginning. The building was built in the shape of a cross and had 2 floors. Between the enormous bookshelves covering the stone walls, there were still remains of its past era, such as old chapels and altar pieces that recalled its history. At the moment Mike was heading to his desk, from behind a column came out a woman around 60 years old wearing glasses. "You must be Harry's replacement," the woman said. Mike nodded. "Poor man, to end up like that." The woman stopped her sentence when she saw Mike's surprised face. "End up like that?" Mike asked. The woman looked to both sides, making sure no one was listening. "Like that, you know, crazy. Completely crazy. I see you don't know anything," the woman finished. Without giving Mike time to ask again, she continued toward the exit door. No one was left in the building. Mike sat at his desk, located in the central corridor of the ground floor. On the table, he poured out the pieces of a puzzle. It was his favorite pastime for long guard nights. After a while, he prepared to make his first round. He was used to walking through buildings every night in the dark, lighting his way with his flashlight, making sure the windows were closed and no device had been left on. But what he was going to live that night, he had never experienced before. In the silence of the night, upstairs, what sounded like footsteps could be heard. Mike thought maybe it was the wind that had opened a poorly closed window. But a few seconds later, he heard them again. This time, he heard knocks that seemed to be made by someone upstairs again. The noises were loud, as if demanding Mike's attention. Frightened, Mike headed toward the staircase, when at that moment someone or something called the elevator. Terrified, Mike watched as the elevator number stopped at the top floor. From below, he heard the doors open, followed by footsteps walking inside. The elevator started moving down again. Mike, scared, grabbed his service weapon. The elevator stopped in front of him. His heart was beating violently. The doors opened, but inside there was no one. Mike could not understand what was happening. Who or what had called the elevator? Mike could not move. A cold sensation ran through his body, paralyzing him. His nightmare had only just begun. At that moment, he heard something upstairs again. This time, it was more chilling. The cry of a baby. Mike's heart stopped. Mike checked his walkie-talkie. It was not working. Again, the baby's cry, this time clearly. It would not stop crying. Maybe it is a cat trapped inside the building, Mike thought, trying to convince himself. He slowly climbed the stairs. The upper floor was completely dark. He turned on the switch, but the lights did not turn on. Once upstairs, the baby's cry was clearer and more terrifying. With his flashlight, he walked down the long hallway covered with shelves full of books. At the end, there was a half-open door from which the cries were coming. There was light inside. Mike's heart was beating faster and faster. Just as he was about to reach the doorway, a woman quickly passed in front of it from inside the room. She was wearing a pink dress that did not seem to belong to this era. Mike could not help but jump in fright. Who's there? He managed to say. At that moment, the light inside the room went out, leaving the hallway in total darkness. Mike's flashlight was the only light. At that instant, he heard a kind of breathing approaching him, while a human-shaped shadow moved along the wall toward him.
It's my baby!
scream terrified Mike, who ran downstairs. He tried to make the walkie-talkie work, but it was impossible. He was alone in that horrible place. But the real shock came when he went downstairs and saw that the puzzle he had been working on was completely finished. If this is a joke, it's not funny. Can you hear me? He shouted, almost in tears. Next to the desk, there was an old newspaper that had not been there before. The date was 1899. Mike could not believe what he was seeing. The wife of the doctor of Saint Bartholomew Hospital for the Insane dies in childbirth of her first child. The baby was born almost dead. The mother did not survive minutes later. The tragedy wanted that both died. Below there was a photo of a young woman wearing a dress identical to the one he had seen upstairs. At that instant, the ground floor went dark. A breathing sound was heard almost next to Mike's ear. Frightened, Mike pointed his flashlight forward. A cadaverous woman dressed in pink stood in front of him. In her arms, she held the skeletal body of a baby.
My baby! It's mine!
She screamed. Early in the morning, the nurses carried Mike out on a stretcher. He had been found unconscious on the floor by one of the workers. On the table, the puzzle was unassembled, stored inside its box. That night, another guard will begin the shift at the Shortbridge Public Library.
Some buildings are not haunted by ghosts. They are haunted by memory, by grief, by unfinished screams. And sometimes the night guard is not there to protect the building. He is there to replace the last one. This was Whispers Unseen. If you ever hear a baby crying inside an empty building at night, don't go upstairs. Sleep well. Subscribe if you're there.